Hey, welcome back, YouTube friends. A little hitch here. I had a internet go out in my stream, so sorry for the jarring transition here. But we're gonna try and hop back into it a little bit close to where I left off. So let's hop back to the left monitor. I believe we were talking about Frostbite here, and I was trying to make. I'm not sure exactly where I was in it, but I'll say that. When you have a 1 mana deal 2 to a creature spell in a Magic format at common, it tends to be format defining either way. Like, I mean, I shouldn't say format defining, it's a bellwether card. It's a good, it's one of the reasons I look for these cards, because we can learn a lot from a format about how good this type of card is in it. And the thing that makes these cards good is when formats are aggressive and have a lot of 1 and 2 toughness creatures that you really want to kill. And those tend to be one and the same. Slow formats can have small creatures you want to kill, but aggressive formats always have small creatures you want to kill. And if this is an aggressive format, we're going to really prioritize our Frostbites. And if not, we may find that we only want like 1. And there've been formats where shock has been so bad you only play 0 or 1, and formats where the shock spell has been so good you will literally take as many as you get. And so we just don't know yet. But from what I've seen so far, the aggro is there, and from what I've seen so far, there's a lot of 3+ mana, 2 toughness creatures that you wouldn't mind killing and getting a pretty good value out of. So I'm thinking Frostbite is likely to be good in the format, but it's one of those places where I'm not gonna pretend I know. This is a place where how good 2 damage for 1 is so format dependent that we're gonna figure it out together coming up. But let's keep an eye on it. And to start with, take it early. I'm going to generally assume that it's going to have worthwhile targets and is fine to go after as an early pick until proven otherwise, but we may be proven otherwise. Yeah, splashable in snow. I didn't even mention the snow part because, obviously, if you're in a snow deck, you're very happy with this. But I'm saying even if you're not snow, probably going to be fine in early. Hoggy Mop. Well, I think what, and also I'll get to snow splashing later, but I think part of what Hat is getting at is that sometimes you inherently in a snow deck are going to have some splash capability. 1, because green is one of the snow colors and inherently has fixing, and 2, you're often going to take off or half color snow lands to be able to get your snow permanent density, and you might actually be running a random snow mountain in your green-black snow deck anyway, and then you realize, oh, yeah, I could actually throw it in my... yeah. You're not splashing for shock, but you would splash for a bolt, and snowlands themselves are going to provide both the reason and ability to do it. Jinx says, doubts you ever run off-color snowlands. You hope not to, but I think there's going to be decks, Jinx, where your color requirements are low enough, your fixing is good enough, and especially if you're getting duels, like let's say I'm a green-blue snow deck, and I end up with 3 of the ETB tapped green-blue snowlands. If my inherent fixing is that good, that's when I'm willing to say, okay, and I'm so snowy, I'm willing to run this, wastes. I'm willing to run a wastes because I have enough of the duels that my mana is still good. That's so. Ah, that's good to know. Hunter H. Slayton there is a neighbor of mine, and hearing that Hunter also got lost internet makes me at least relieved that it's like I'm not worried about my equipment now. It was just something in the neighborhood. Yeah, there is there's construction going on. I wonder if construction hit a cable or something. Although if that were the case, I think we'd still be down. Anyway, let's get back to checking out red here. We've talked enough about the shock factor, but Hoggy Mob, 4 and a red for a 5/4 with boast, and when you boast for 1 and a red, it deals 1 damage to any target. Interesting. this is the kind of pinging we have these days. Again, one toughness, like how an eternal question I ask about a new format is, are there desirable one toughness creatures out there? And if so, what are the ways they are vulnerable? And I think if there's a lot of high value targets for the Hoggy mob, then we can see this doing more work than your traditional 5-drop. But look how far 5-drops have come. A 5/4 with upside for 5 in red. I know that's kind of normal now. It's just it's the magic boomer in me that just looks at that and can't believe that this is a common. But it's just the nature of changing power of creatures in Magic. It's been an appropriate change, so I like it. It's just it still blows me away sometimes of the idea of putting a card like this and showing this back to, like, drop this in Odyssey or something, you know. And I didn't coin Magic Boomer. That's kind of a term that's been going around these days. But I am absolutely a Magic Boomer. Emmerstrum Raider 2/1. Here we go. 1 toughness, 2-drop. When it enters the battlefield, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. So we've got ourselves a Fizzy Wizzy that doesn't have a relevant creature type. Fizzy Wizzy was good, but it was very good because of the wizard type mattering. But this is going to be fine, I think. But it's also, note the 1 toughness. So if there's a lot of tokens running around, that gets a lot worse. I feel like in Zendikar there were below average tokens. You had some uncommons that were making tokens, but not a lot of commons were making tokens. Is that true? Chat will get my back on this one, because Lord knows if chat can be right and I can be wrong, they'll sure let me know. But I don't remember a lot of 1/1 tokens at common in Zendikar, but we've seen some here, so it could be a strike against the raiders of the set. Open the Omen Paths, 2 in a red for an instant. You can choose add mana or pump your team. The add mana is super unexciting. You almost never want to spend a card for just a burst of mana, unless it's like a Black Lotus. then I'm in. You know, and there's better than Black. It doesn't have to be just Black Lotus, but it helps in Double Spell. But I doubt we're going to get payoffs in Double Spell that bring this up to playable, just because it does produce a Double Spell. And the +1/+0 is a little weak. You really want your team pumpers to be 2 power or better, and spend 3 to get 4. I kind of wish this would be like, maybe they just didn't want it to be that powerful, but I think this would be an interesting card if it were 4 mana, spend 4 to get like 6, and then creatures you control get +2. Of course, that just makes it extra powerful. One of those two things, like either give it a real jump or a real pump. Real jump or a real pump. As it is, I don't like either side. Run amok, we've seen before, Dominaria style. I was saying keep an eye out for red. What is the plan? What is the pump for red? And we've got it here. It's an old classic. Target attacking creature gets +3/+3 and gains trample until end of turn. Attacking creature. So one of the big drawbacks to this one is that you cannot cast it to save your creature from damage-based removal. And that's very real, although it's not the primary use of combat tricks. It also, though, prevents you from just being able to block and play this on blocks to win blocking. And obviously that means that the point of this is to be in a deck that doesn't want to block. But even in your most aggressive limited decks, sometimes you find yourself playing defense. And in that case, this is doing nothing. And here I am slipping into set review mode. But looking at what's up with the instant speed combat tricks of red is one of my things to do for preparing for a format. So it's also a thing to know what your opponent has. And yeah, the red decks that did work when Dominaria aggro did work, it was because Run Amok worked. Would you agree with that? Any Dominaria fans out there who can +1 me on that one? Because it was just like, even whether it was Wizards, where red aggro was actually good in the format, or whether it was the occasions where red-white aggro actually worked, it was because Run Amok, you just found yourself in those spots as the defender, like, well, can't beat Run Amok. I guess I block and hope they don't have it, right? They do, but Boast does encourage blocking. Even if Boast doesn't encourage blocking quite like, say, a when this deals combat damage, draw a card type creature does. You know, a Saboteur is a slang for those creatures. But so even though it's not quite as, you really block it, Boast really is going to encourage some blocking, which is going to make Run Amok stuff better. And there is like creature power when dying type stuff that is would be helped by that too. Anyway, still pretty darn narrow, but if you are going all in aggro, Run Amok is your friend. Seize the Spoils, 2 and a red, sorcery as an additional cost to cast a spell, discard a card, draw 2 cards. This is an interesting card. Again, I don't think it's top 3 though, so I'm not going to get too much into it, although it does create a treasure token. I'm always interested in cards that are creating extra permanence, and treasure is just such an interesting mechanic. There's some stuff going on here, but this is kind of Red's rummage, so I guess that's what it's got. I don't think it's very great though. Shackles of Treachery, 2 and a red, gain control of target creature until end of turn. Untap that creature until end of turn. It gains haste, and whenever this creature deals damage, destroy target equipment attached to it. I like that line of text. It's kind of funny. I read this card after I had a thought. I was thinking completely independently before I learned about this card about Steel and Sack, and how we were talking, I think on Friday, it came up in chat how Steel and Sack strategies as an archetype for black-red often just don't get there. And I think the reason they often don't get there is because, as I've said many times, even dating back to my OG stuff on limited resources, it's still a 2-for-2. When I Shackles of Treachery your creature, and then I use my spell to sacrifice that creature, I've still used my 2 cards to kill your 2 cards. But it has this setup cost of needing a pair. Like I need the pair of cards for even to get that 2-for-2. And that's almost never going to be better than just having a black removal spell and a red removal spell. Like that's generally so much better than the Steel and Sack plan. And so I was thinking, if that's the problem, if the problem with Steel and Sack is that the result just isn't better than 2 removal spells, for Steel and Sack to be really good, the Steel, it needs to do something more. And ostensibly what you're getting is damage, right? Well, it's 2 removal spells plus you get an attack with their creature. Okay, it's 2 removal spells plus some damage. I do grant you that, but it's still not, it's generally not enough to make it good. And so I was thinking of things like, what if Shackles of Treachery said, when this creature attacks, you may rummage, right? I was just starting to think in terms of those. Like, what else can we put on a Steel card that gives it more than just a 2-for-2 of value, that it actually lets you do something more like a 3-for-2 reliably? Then suddenly that strategy gets interesting. And I promise you, I thought all of this before reading Shackles of Treachery, and then seeing that, oh, somebody already had the same idea, that basically to up the game of the Steel and Sack approach a little bit, what if the Steel card gave a little bit more going on? And this is kind of interesting. So yeah, you steal a creature and then it breaks its own equipment. That's kind of funny. So, but I do like that it does a little plus, even if it's not going to come up a ton. We're still going to evaluate this as a typical Steel card. But I thought I would both mention the funny coincidence of thinking about how to make that strategy better, while also acknowledging that we do have a Steel. So then your question with when you do see the Steel at common for 3 or less mana, once it's 4, I'm kind of out. But at 3 or less mana, I am interested in at least keeping an eye out for what things sacrifice for free or for 1. And so if I happen to be running a couple of village rites? If I happen to be running a couple of village rites in my red-black deck anyway, I might just play a Shackles, because you're gonna just have, because that's good. That's almost more than the classic steal and sack as well. If I steal your creature and sack it to draw 2, I feel like I'm getting a better advantage than just a 2 for 2 as well. So I'm gonna keep an eye out for that combo. Smashing Success, though, is Artifact or Land Hate at 4 mana. We're gonna skip that. Certainly not top 3, as we're trying to find top 3 stuff. Squash, 5 mana, instant. This spell costs 3 less to cast if you control a giant. Deals 6 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So, as a giant build around, this is going to be very good. But I think it's going to be a high pick for most red decks, given that we're seeing a lot of giants in them. I think red-green and red-blue, where you're getting shapeshifters along with it, is going to be helpful. I think, like, this is... Let's say you have no giants in your deck whatsoever. If I have no giants in my deck whatsoever, this is like a C-, CC-. So... I think it's got much upside. I'm just wondering if it's top 3 is really what I'm working through here. Not sure if it's top 3. Let's figure it out. Tormentor's Helm, a red equipment. We've seen a lot more artifacts be colored from R&D lately. I think that's good as well. That's something I pushed for when I was in the building. I'm not saying they're doing it because of me, but I was certainly one of the voices saying artifacts need to be predominantly colored spells. And I know one of the loudest voices in agreement with me in R&D on this front was Dave Humphreys. And Dave Humphreys led this set. So it does not surprise me at all to see the artifacts see a lot of colored artifacts here. And the reason why Dave and I and others in Magic R&D agree and wanted to see colored artifacts become more the norm is that artifacts are extremely hard to design because they don't use the color pie. The color pie, gang, turns out is important. Turns out the color pie does a lot of important stuff. And when you start saying that any color can use this effect, you need it to be acceptable for the least pie appropriate color. Does that make sense? So like if you're going to have an artifact that deals direct damage, for example, it can't be red level because that's red. It has to be blue level. It has to be white level. You know, it has to be so bad that white is allowed to have it. Blue is allowed to have it, and in that case, the artifacts start to get bad. And then if you make them good enough, if you decide, look, we're gonna make artifacts good, well then they're too good. Then every color gets access to this broken thing, right? Anyway, sorry, a little tangent rant there, but I just think artifacts are so flavor valuable to Magic and so good in that realm that they really just need to embrace the colored artifacts so that they're not so hard to design balanced. All right, and this helm, creature gets +1/+1, equip 1. It's already a short sword. We saw that in Zendikar, in M21, not Zendikar. Again, I've been playing a lot of M21. We saw it in M21. We've seen it in other formats, but you've already got a short sword, and whenever equipped creature becomes blocked, it deals 1 damage to a defending player. That's super interesting. That's a level of reach that's kind of a classic damned if you do, damned if you don't type ability. It's like, all right, you're at 1 life, you're dead because I'm attacking with my creature, and whether you block or you don't block, you're taking 1, right? And this, I think, is very relevant to the question of how aggressive is red and how good is how good is that, you know, I was looking earlier at the signpost that said red, white, Boros was looking to be very equipment heavy. And I was raising my eyebrow at that because equipment heavy in the past has not worked well for Boros. But this looks like the type of Boros equipment I can get behind. This looks like the type of equipment that if Boros is equipment matters. This is the type of thing I want in it. So I don't know if this is top 3, but this is excellent in a equipment matters aggro strategy. Yeah, turn 2, putting this on any 1-drop is really incredible. We've got the Firewalker here, 2 and a red for a 3/2 boast. And when you boast, you exile the top of your card of your library, and you may play that card this turn. The play language as opposed to cast means you do get to play lands. That's super important. And don't be like me and play lands out of your hand without thinking about it if you haven't yet boasted your Firewalker. And I like this card's design, and I think it's going to be a meat and potatoes card for red. I think we're going to be happy to play this and happy to play multiples, because it's nice to hey, if you can send in for a trade, like if the board is such that this 3/2 is at least a trade with everything your opponent has, fantastic. You get to cast something for free and trade, and they probably have to trade or it gets to happen again. And even if you're going to get eaten, there comes a point in the late game where you're like, look, I'm going to cash the Firewalker in for a card. I know it's not cast for free, but I'm saying the fact that you can eventually cash it in for something and that you can play lands off it is relevant. But it's true that you're going to brick early on. Like if you cast this on 3 and then attack on 4, you may be in a spot where you pay 1 and now you got 3 mana. Oh, you found a 5-drop. But you're done for, right? But once you get to like 5 mana, you're going to be able to cast anything you find, basically. So it has a window where it's not great, but then it starts to become a really nice way to replace itself. I'm digging that card. Vault Robber, 1 in red for a 1/3. And you can exile a creature card from your graveyard. A lot of that going on in the set. So I think just in general, we want to keep in mind creature cards in graveyards. But I don't think making a treasure token on turn 5 when you have creature cards in your graveyard is going to be super relevant. I could see this mattering if first and foremost, if a 1/3 for 2 matters, then I could see this mattering. And setting up a long game, you know, the dream is like this helps you make it to some crazy 5-color late game. But can I say that I love the... I assume this is a top-down design. This is a grave robbing... I think somebody thought about what's a grave robber mechanic, and then came up with this. If it was bottom up, I'm impressed that creative figured out that this was Vault Robber. If somebody came up with the mechanic, exile a creature card from your graveyard, create a treasure token, and then somebody put creative around it, that would be even more impressive. So anyway, just a little design thought there. Furikawari says, lots of 3 power at 3, no 1 toughness at 2, stats line up badly. So the suggestion from chat that 1/3 for 2 is not a great stat line in the format, whereas in Dominaria, it was the thing that made aggro so weak, is that you had a bunch of 1/3s for 2 that had kicker stuff so that if you got them late, did something, but if you needed them on turn 2, they could do that job you needed. So that's interesting. If 1/3s for 2 are not good around here. Anyway, boy, let's see. I think I'm on, we're doing top 3 designations. That's kind of what we've been finishing on here. Also, I need to get my notes. Where'd my notes go? There they go. I had Demon Bolt and Frostbite to start out. Frostbite could fall off if it's not the format for it, or it could rise to number 1 if it is the format for it. But I'm going to start it on the list, and I'm going to ask chat what they think should be the other one. Jinx just likes the removal, all the 3 removal spells. Maybe so. All right, sounds like everybody's on board with the Frostbite Demon Bolt, so let's figure out our third again. I'm going to take nominations for something other than Frostbite or Demon Bolt, and then we'll poll it and see what people think. Hulk Called. Let's see, we had Breakneck Called. Pup. Breakneck. These are just commons. We're only looking at commons. Firewalker is reasonable to include on the list. And Squash for sure. So go Squash, Firewalker. Probably one of those. Hulk, Pup, Breakneck, Squash, Firewalker. And I put Helm. I can put Helm on the list. I don't think it's going to be top 3. But probably a good sign for red that we're struggling to narrow it down, and that there's a bunch of stuff that we legit think is a solid top 3. Anyway, let's see what people think of this. Like, is Squash squashing it? Firewalking might be walking off with it. Hulk is a giant coward, but a giant. Where's that firework? I want to read it again. Squash and Firewalker are tied. Interesting. I think that's pretty appropriate. I think we've distilled it down to the essence. I'm going to put down Firewalker because it is generically good, and there's 2 other good removal spells. So I think... but I'll note that Squash tied for third. Yeah, I'm not sure what third is. I think there's a lot of parts that you could argue are very deck dependent. I like the Firewalker selection because it's so generically good. It's going to go in any red deck. Where are there going to be some red decks that don't want a Helm? There are going to be some red decks that don't need a Squash. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, Jinx. If you can't see why Firewalker could be good, if you are in a spot where you, I mean, heck, I was talking about situation. I didn't even talk about the case where Firewalker just has an attack, like the turns where wow, you just have an attack and you get to boast. Like this is going to be not too difficult to get your card back, and sometimes is going to get you 2 for 1 before it is off the table, and in very rare occasions sometimes it's going to draw you multiple cards across multiple turns and like actually win you a game. Yeah, you're wrong, Jinx. I think you're wrong. I should say that. We should talk. We should use our words wisely. I believe you are underrating this card, and its generic utility will make it a high value pick for all red decks. Well, to say you're wrong to somebody about a Magic opinion when we haven't played the set is, you know, I don't like it when people make predictions about something we haven't played yet. I can't be that way myself. I need to say my reasons. I think its generic utility makes it a strong inclusion in any red deck, and therefore it's going to be a high-ish pick for its general usefulness. How have you been playing out your games, Mehdi? I'm just curious. Well, see, we get into the very finessey situation, Jinx. If you're going to say it's not very... You're saying it's not very good, but I'm not saying it's bad. Well, I guess we're getting into why LR starts doing grading. So it's that you can give us a refinement of what that means, because you're treading an awfully gray area there, awfully thin line if you're saying it is not good, but it is not bad. You know what I mean? Cockatrice, cool. Okay, let's move on though. I'm gonna get to the next color. Then we're gonna talk archetype overview and then call it a stream. All right, my notes for green are that I want to know how beefy is the beef and at what points in the curve. Like, at what points in the curve does green have something that just seems like it's way bigger than everything else that's going to be out there? Do they have a fight spell or a pump spell or a punch spell? Like, are we biting or fighting, and how good is that? Like, how good is the green removal? How good is the pump spell? Especially, is this a pump spell that has a +5/+5 mode? It seems like sets that have a green pump spell that can go up to +5/+5 end up with this thing where we're always saying, oh, you could lose to blah. You could lose to +5/+5. So that's something I want to note whether it has. I want to know whether it's anti-air cards and whether it's anti-artifact enchantment cards are main deckable in best of one. And I want to know if it has card draw, creature-based card draw. Like, is green finding any way to get card advantage? And what's the trample density? Do we have evasion on the ground? Do we have a way to close through trample if the ground gets clogged? So those are my questions about green as we go in. Arachnoform, 1 and a green for enchant creature. Enchant creature gets +2/+2, has reach, and is every creature type. +2/+2 for 2 is a very nice creature buff. If you said, like, let's say this, I know this is too powerful, but that's my point. If this card said, Arachnoform can't be countered, and in addition to everything else on this card, it said the enchanted creature gets hexproof, I would play this. This would be insane. It would be one of the better, it would be one of the best green cards ever printed for limited, just because that's how powerful putting +2/+2 for 2 mana really can be. But of course, the drawback is that it does not have hexproof, and it can be countered. And counter not the thing. Really, it's like if you guarantee me that it always lands, right? Yeah, and it's sometimes the fact that they can kill the creature out from underneath you, or the fact that they can kill the creature after this is on it, makes me not like those. But definitely not a top 3 because of that. But a very aggressive, very, very aggressive. And you're going to lose to this. You know, there are times where your opponent is just going to do this on a 1-drop, and you can't answer it, and you lose. But mostly, we're going to have things like Broken Wings to manage it. So I was talking about what is the anti-artifact, what is the anti-enchantment, what is the anti-flyer. Sometimes, as it is here, is all in one card. We have destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. I generally think that the equipment at uncommon, we've seen some decent common equipment, but the uncommon equipment, there's highly playable equipment at every color at uncommon, making Broken Wings a playable, and the sagas, good point on sagas. Sometimes sagas already do their thing by the time you can Broken Wings it, but the ones where the value is later in the story, you can certainly Broken Wings a saga. So I think it's doing enough to be considered main deckable in best of one, and we'll see how that bears out. Elderleaf Mentor, 3 and a green, 3/2. And it makes a 1/1 when it enters. That's fine. It's a 4/3 worth of power for 4 mana across 2 bodies. The green could do some go wide stuff with white potentially, but I doubt that's going to be a top 3. We'll see. Glittering Frost, 2 and a green for a snow land enchantment, or sorry, a snow enchantment that enchants land, and enchanted land is snow. I was talking about looking for cards that produce 2 snow permanents for 1 card, and this is one, so keep that in mind. Very, very good snow enabler. And also, again, snow looks like it may be trying to splash simply because it's going to be forced into splashing, or almost it's going to become free splashes when you're playing these ETB tapped dual snow lands and picking up some random basic snows, and you realize, oh, with the Glittering Frost, that green X tap land and the snow land I picked up, we can splash for whatever easily. Just calling that out, but no way this is going to be top 3. Also going to call out that if you're not doing at least 2 of the 3 things on this card, there's 3 things happening on this card: ramp, fixing, and snow. And I really think you need to be doing 2 of those 3 things before you play this. Do not, unless you're desperate on snow. Like if you really are just doing snow hard, I could see doing this when you really didn't need fixing or ramp, but try to do it when you're doing at least 2 out of the 3 things. Notfold Recluse is 4 and a 2 for a reach spider. Interesting. Like, I like this a lot better than like the 1/4 reach, because this at least does something if they don't have flyers. Like the problem with these defensive reach creatures is that to play them, especially best of 1, you have to take on this liability that if they are not playing flyers, you have a very, very underpowered card. But when you can make your anti-flying defense a 4/2 for 3 that can attack anyway, sure. This is not a high pick, not top 3. We can move on pretty quickly here, but I'm just saying I actually like the high power, low toughness answer to flying for green than the other way around. It trades down on attacking, or but the point is, like, compare this as a main deck Mabinap to 1/4 reach for 3. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I know that it has downsides at 2 toughness, but as a main deck answer to flyers, it's miles better than a 1/4 for reach. 1/4 reach, Outrider. Okay, here's our beef that's bigger than most stuff at the table, but as we saw, the 5 mana 5/4 pinger in red. Grizzled Outrider is no longer, like, I'm wondering when creature power creep is going to give us the 5 mana 5/6 at common. It wouldn't be broken, right? It'll happen. You heard it here first. Pull up this clip in N months or years from now when Wizards prints their first 5/6 5 mana green common. Or maybe 6/5. That'd be another way they could go with it. Yeah, Fenrir says 6/5 first. You're right. 6/5 is a little more green. 5/6 is stronger, which is probably why we'd see 6/5 first. Yep. Guardian Gladewalker, 1 and a green for a 1/1 shapeshifter changeling. When it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. This is one of these glue designs that I really like. One of these new world commons from Wizards of the Coast that really shows that they have honed their craft of limited. This is one of those things that's doing, we saw +1/+1 counter stuff in, was it, or maybe am I conflating stuff again? I thought there was a color that was working with that a bit. But even if it's not exactly a thing, I love that this is a 2-drop curve filler at its baseline. It does the changeling thing, so it has all this tribal glue going on with it. And it's got the +1/+1 counter thing so that it doesn't have to, that it can make something else better. I just love that this is doing a lot of little things well and adding up to a nice card. Yeah, Dauntless Survivor, but with the changeling factor is a big deal. It's not top 3, much like Dauntless Survivor wasn't, but much like Dauntless Survivor, sometimes really surprised in how useful it proved to be. One thing that's very, very nice, besides just the having the 2/2 on 2, is that ability to make something else great and making the Glade Walker super expendable. Like get value out of the body, sacrifice it or something, right? Anyway, not top 3, but I like this as a glue design. Horizon Seeker, 2 and a green, 3/2, boast, 1 and a green, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. So it's not ramping, but that is card advantage. You don't often feel like land is a valuable card, but it's nice to know that, what was the, again, I'm in M21 mindset. There's the larcenous, whatever. There's in blue and M21 at common, there's a 1/2 for 2 and a blue that draws a card when it attacks. And it creates a situation where it's nice to know that you don't even need to connect. You can get your card back at least just by attacking, and know that even if they have an easy block and you're going to eat the larcenist, you're still going to get that card back. Horizon Seeker is only getting you a land, not a random card off the top, which might be some awesome spell. But it is, again, it's nice to know that you can attack, and if they block and eat it, you're still getting that land you needed to fix your splash or whatever. If it trades, you're fine with a trade. And this is one that's going to be at its best in doing the whole I have a combat trick. Because this is because I'm saying, hey, it's nice that even if it's going to be eaten, you can send this in and know you're getting something. That's exactly the kind of mentality the defender against you might have when you attack with your Horizon Seeker and you have a combat trick up. So this is going to get some people in the combat trick. It can also work with the black. We talked about the importance of knowing that there is a black card in the set that finishes something off that has been dealt damage. So sending Horizon Seeker into their 7/7, boasting for a land, and then finishing off the 7/7 with the, well, I'm going to say Deadeye because I can't remember what it's called, but you know what I mean, right? The finisher, Vraska's finisher, the Deadeye, that thing. It's gonna do work. Jarl, Jarl. Icehide Troll, is that top 3? I don't know, it's top 3. It's, I don't, I was saying, people felt that Firewalker over here was top 3, so if Firewalker is top 3 in red, is Horizon Seeker top 3 in green? Well, no, again, this is only 1, this is 2, and this can get you anything, and this only gets you land. So anyway, I still think Horizon Seeker. I still think Horizon Seeker is quite good though. Icehide Troll, 2 and a green for a 2/3, and for double snow, it gets +2/+0 and gains indestructible until end of turn. You have to tap it though, which means that. At least you can clear the way. The reason you have that clause in there is so that the aggro players can at least, quote, kill it and get it out of the way for 1 turn. I don't know what job this creature has, though. Is it defensive? Maybe this is supposed to be defensive, and then late game it can start turning sideways. Yeah, so I think it's flexible in that it does an interesting job on defense and offense, but you don't often have, like, 2 snow mana is going to be tough to come by as observed. Not obvious unless you're like the only snow drafter and you just get all the good stuff. Why do you need to tap it after activation as opposed to what? Making it part of the cost? But yeah, anyway, it does double duty for a snow deck. And I think this is more in here to get to the snow decks late than it is to be top 3 or anything. It's going to depend on the competition for it, Jinx. Like a lot of things, it depends on the openness of your lane. If you're not in competition for it, it could be easy, but the second there's competition for it, you might be light. Indestructible is definitely the new Regenerate, yes. Yaspera Sentinel, 1/2 for a single green. It has reach, and it has tap an untapped creature you control, add 1 mana of any color. I don't think this is going to be good unless 1/1 flyers are a serious thing. Probably not, certainly not top 3, and I'm looking for top 3s. King Harald's Revenge, this probably is. 2 and a green, this feels like a fight card coming. Until end of turn, target creature gets +1/+1 for each creature you control and gains trample. Oh, okay, never mind, not fight. It's different, but it's somewhat of a fight. It forces a fight of sorts. Target creature gets +1/+1 for each creature you control and gains trample. It must be blocked this turn if able. I don't think that's top 3, but it is a reasonable potential finisher in green. Not because it's a lure effect. Lure effect says everything must block, and then it can become like that uncommon wizard from Zendikar and is an actual finisher. In this case, only one thing needs to block to satisfy the clause in the card, but the +X and trample is the part that makes it a finisher. So has a role, has a job. If I need a way to close out a green deck's game, I think you can do worse than this, but it has to be that job. It's not every deck is going to want this, and I'd say most aren't. Mammoth Growth. Hey, Lola Man. What's up, Luca? Welcome, Raiders. We are in the middle of not a set review in the classic sense of strict card by card, discuss everything, although we have been going through the commons pretty tightly. We are discussing, we're just trying to get a jump on the format. We are trying to come up with what our learnings can be. We started by looking at all the gold uncommons. Now we're taking a look at the commons and doing a top 3 exercise that R&D does. When R&D is working on balance for a limited set, what they do is they come to a consensus. The team working on the set comes to a consensus about what the top 3 cards in each color are at common, what the top 3 commons are in each color, and then they rank the top 15 commons to make sure that there's color represented throughout the spectrum of top 15. We're not going to do the top 15 thing, but we have been trying to figure out what we think the top 3 of each top 3 commons in each color are, and now we're here on green. Mammoth Growth is where we're at, looking at it. It's the pump spell. The other thing I'm doing is saying what about each color do we want to take note of at common for the purposes of limited, and what I had on green, one of the things I had is take a note of the green pump. Is the green pump spell, can it get up to like +5/+5 levels? And it looks like the answer is no. But it does do this foretell giant growth thing, so you can get a little extra on your giant growth if you have time to play it as a foretell spell. I don't think this is anywhere near a top 3 for green. Usually the pump spell is not, but it is worth always know what the green pump spell can do so that you know how much bigger an unblocked green creature can get at common. So just keep that in mind. Always got to know your common green pump spell. Masked Vandal, 1 and a green, 1/3, Changeling, and when it enters, you may exile a creature card from your graveyard, which has been a big theme. If you do, exile target artifact or enchantment an opponent controls. Oh, thank you for that sub. Who's subbing? I missed. Oh, Queen Dragon, gifting subs to the Cardinator. Very nice. Look at that. 65 gift subs from Queen. You are my queen indeed. Anyway, Masked Vandal is interesting. The Changeling glue probably makes it worth running if you are anything tribal. And then having a little naturalize-y type effect is nice. Not a top 3, though. Ravenous Lindworm, 4 green for a 6/6, and when it enters, you gain 6 life. Just big, fat creature, but nothing top 6, nothing top 3E about it. You'll play these when you need a big top end and don't have it. Roots of Wisdom, 1 and a green for a sorcery. Mill 3 cards, then return a land card or elf card from your graveyard to your hand. If you can't, draw a card. I do like that this has a draw a card failsafe, that you're never getting nothing. But it says if you can't, you don't get to decide to draw if you don't like your options. If there is a land or an elf, you must take the land or the elf. And I don't like really this kind of wheel spinny card in a Foretell format. When we have all these ways to spin our wheels with Foretell, I don't need to also spin my wheels with Roots of Wisdom. See you, Lola. Thanks a lot for the raid. You take care. Get some rest. This is going to be like the classic last pick green, you know, card draw improver that I'm just not interested in. Just too wheel spinny for what it does. Sarulf's Packmate, 3 and a green for a 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. I'm already pretty interested in that. And then we have Foretell for 1 and a green. I think this is a top 3 right here. Packmate. I mean, we were debating during Zendikar just how good the 3/2 ETB draw card Wizard was at common and green. And I thought even that one was pretty darn good. Of course, it had the Wizard thing going for it. It had a relevant creature type. But really, the Foretell on this is even better than the relevant creature type. Like, I think I would like this better if it were 3/2 than the Wizard from Zendikar. The fact that it's a 3/3, like the extra toughness is just wah, and then the Foretell, wah, Foretell on a card, because like one of the things I love about Foretell is how it allows you to operate on 2 mana. Sometimes you miss your 3rd land drop and you're trying to scrap your way to making it to turn 6 alive so that you can come back in the game. And not only does this let you operate on 2 mana, it lets you draw a card to help find that 3rd. So I think Packmate is maybe, well, it's my favorite green card so far. Have we punched yet? Oh, here's the fight card down there. Okay, so Struggle and Packmate are going to probably be 2 of them, but then what's the 3rd? Sculptor of Winter, 1 and a green, untapped Snowland. It does have the floor of being a grizzly bear. So if your deck needs a 2/2, it does fill that role of floor, even if you're not doing the snow thing. Then if you are doing the snow thing, this is premium. So snow definitely looks like that lane where if you get to be the only snow drafter, you're going to get the hookup. And if you are fighting for snow, it's probably going to be pretty weak, it seems to me. So, and what's interesting about snow is that there's a lot of snow that's enticing people to splash snow, run a couple of EDB tap snow lands, and then run that snow card for a little extra value. So you might be getting competition as a snow drafter from not snow drafters if the snow splash turns out to be real. So we'll see about that. I don't think this is a top 3 though, because it would be top 3 if it just untapped target land, but it is snow land. So that's what I'm talking about though. If you're snow, this is going to come to you late, and you're getting top 3 level power very, very late if you carve out your lane in snow. Yeah, good point. The ETB tapped duels. Maybe you're splashing the red on that ETB tap duel. You play it and then untap it with Sculptor, and you have the red right away. Snakeskin Veil, +1/+1 counter on target creature you control and gains hexproof until end of turn. That's funny because I was just looking at I was just playing M21 where the until end of turn version of this is totally playable. Ranger's Guile is totally playable in M21 because it's such an aggressive format where things need to fit into curve. This is even better. It's Ranger's Guile, but it stays big. So I am in for this. I don't know if it's top 3, but I am in for this. I totally want one of these or more. If this becomes a hyper-aggressive format, then this becomes almost Feat of Resistance like. I know that's a little hyperbolic, but it is half price too. And what happens in a hyper-aggressive format, like in your triple Zendikar, original Zendikar type formats, is that as a defender, you get put in must-block situations. It doesn't matter that they have open mana and you don't. You're in a spot where you need to make some trades or you're just going to lose the game. And if it's one of those types of formats, Snakeskin Veil will become bonkers. Like Snakeskin Veil, again, what I've been using for a more recent example of that type of set is Kaladesh and Kaladesh Remastered, for those of you Arena players who played it recently. Triple Kaladesh, I said Amonkhet. Triple Amonkhet. Triple Amonkhet is one of the most aggressive formats we've had in a long time in the last 10 years, and Snakeskin Veil would have been great in the aggressive decks there. So this is gone. Like, I already liked Ranger's Guile, and this just keeps the buff. So I really like this a lot. And then we get to Struggle for, I haven't even read it. I just saw that it's a fight card. So I'm assuming this is top 3. Let's see. 3 and a green. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then that creature fights up to one target creature you don't control. And it has Foretell. So one drawback is that it is fight, not bite or punch, right? So whenever you actually have to have the creatures trade damage, it's worse for green. You'd much rather see the reach out and bite, because then your small creatures can get in on the action. You know, you can get your 2/1 that kills some 3 toughness thing by getting a +1/+1 counter and then biting it. Fight means that that's going to be a trade instead of a win, so that's very, very relevant. But also relevant is the Foretell here. Foretelling actually shrinks the cost down to 3 total mana, and I think we're going to find, I think we're mostly going to be foretelling this, and it's going to be very good. You're going to find that on turn 4, maybe you pay for the thing you foretold on turn 2, and you pay the foretell cost on this one. Then you just have this waiting around for later. Seems really good. The foretell, that is. As it is, we saw this at sorcery speed. Like, for example, in Zendikar, this was... we had this in Zendikar, but it was bite, not fight, and it was excellent, right? So that's what I'm talking about. Fight is just a lot worse than bite, and this is fight, not bite, but the foretell makes it top 3 for me. Now we're going to figure out what, so I think it's pretty clear that Struggle and Packmate are top 2. What's the third best card? I'm taking nominations. I'll run a quick poll and we'll decide our third best here. Jinx says Revenge. Glade Walker's been called. Horizon for Horizon Seeker. There's the Horizon Seeker. Revenge was called. Snakeskin Veil. Yeah, we can put Veil on. I really do like that. And yes, and if this format turns out to be hyper aggro, we will absolutely consider Veil top 3. I just don't know how aggro the format is yet exactly. Foretell seems like it sets up for quite the long game, but that's what we thought about, frankly, cycling in Amonkhet. When we saw the Amonkhet spoiler, we're like, oh, this is a set, it's got cycling. It's going to have all this long game application, and then there wasn't a long game, and cycling barely mattered, so keep that in mind. But you want to add Outrider just for being large? Sure, we'll add Outrider, and then I don't see anybody else suggesting anything else, so I'm going to go over these. Setting up the next search I want to do here. Kaldheim, and then we're going to do text search. I didn't include an other, but of course you can say other, or and let me know what you think. Veil is, yeah, didn't I put Veil up there? I meant to. Oh, sorry, I didn't. I meant to do Veil, but failed. So you can put Veil if you think so. It looks like Horizon is winning pretty solidly, though. Oh. I meant to include Veil. I think it is going to be an excellent thing to have in your hand if you got any kind of advantage. But Horizon kind of crushed it, so I'll make that as a note. I think green ETB draw card creatures at common. I'm really happy to see this one, because I thought the wizard from Zendikar was great and good thing for the game, and Packmate's even better, and I don't think it's going to be broken. And I think this is the type of card green needs at common to have us, you know, thinking, well, maybe I'll first pick a green common. How many times do you first pick a green common? It's like so small. Because it's always just like, well, I can't take the green common. There's a red removal spell. There's a, you know, M21 pretty much an exception, but another good example of where actually finally they made a creature so good that you can take a creature first over decent removal. Anyway, really, I'm excited about the Packmate, and I'm excited about the use of a common slot on a card draw ETB creature in green. All right, so what I wanted to do here, though, to wrap up today, I want to talk about the load-bearing mechanics of the set and what the implications of those load-bearing mechanics are, what we need to be looking out for as we're thinking about how what we're looking at impacts what we can expect from the set. So I'm going to start with snow. Let's do type snow. So what are the implications of snow in Kaldheim Limited? I think my big takeaway after reading a bunch of the snow stuff is that there are some cards that reward you for heavy snow, and there are other cards that pay you off for having any snow, and that's going to be the real draft tension if you are a heavy snow drafter, is what stuff is being taken from you because of the light snow component. But it becomes, I think snow is going to be the biggest winner in I carved out my lane. It's going to have that feeling of like, oh, this is so wide open. For me, this is a first or second pick level card. For everybody else, this is not a pick at all, and I'm getting this kind of stuff super late. So that's kind of living the dream. Oh, wait, I must have uncommons only selected here. There's obviously more snow than that in the set. There we go. These lands being in the packs is another thing to note about snow, and that people are going to be taking your snow permanents just because, you know what? I'm not snow, but I'm green-white, and I want a green-white dual land. So I just think the snow decks are going to have a lot of trouble carving out their lane simply because they're going to be bleeding resources to people who aren't even technically in snow. It's not even that you're going to be fighting against another snow drafter. And then if there are two heavy snow drafters at a table, well, I certainly hope you're in a different color pair from each other. So we'll see. That's my takeaway there. Be hesitant to jump into this. Don't marry snow unless you're sure that lane is wide open, and be aware of the ability to touch lightly in the land of snow and do some good things for your not snow deck. So I'm going to talk about that for snow. Let's see. Let's talk about Boast. as we can see, if we scroll down here, Boast is predominantly Mardu. There's only one boastful white creature at uncommon and one boastful green creature at common. And mostly it's Mardu stuff. Oh, sorry, I said white. There's no blue Boast, but there's only one. Sorry, I said one white. There's a ton of it up here. There's one green Boast and no blue Boast, but there's Mardu Boast all over. So what we learned from that, Mardu tends to be aggro based, right? So Mardu aggro, Boast aggro. Makes sense. Boast is encouraging attacking. The first thing to point out about Boast and any mechanic in this ilk is that it is an attacking mechanic. That means if you are on defense, these cards do not have Boast at all, right? They're the Horizon Seeker without Boast is a 3/2 for 3, full stop. Mob without Boast, 5/4 for 5, full stop. So you can't always be on the aggressive in limited. Sometimes you're going to be defensive, and that's when Boast really suffers. So keep that in mind, that it is not just an aggressive, it is only aggressive. It does nothing if you're not being aggressive, and whenever one of the load-bearing mechanics is like that, you got to be very aware of that. We had and that's just classic Mardu type strategies, type keyword mechanics. We've had Mentor, we've had Raid, what else? Battalion. So many Mardu style mechanics just say attack, attack, attack. So keep that in mind. Then the other thing I want you to keep in mind about Boast is that the threat of activation is real. You are often going to be in spots where folks aren't going to block. I mean, Fearless Pup is your poster child for that whole thing, right? First strike, Boast, 2 and a red. Fearless Pup gets +2/+0 until end of turn. This is not a blockable creature until your opponent has 4 toughness available. Then they can start blocking. If you have 3 mana, they need 4 toughness before they can block. Now, the problem is 1 power isn't that big a deal to take. So I actually, with Pup, want to work on augmenting it. But that gets to my other point. Well, with Pup, there is a way, the point of the Boast is that it will not be blocked. But with a lot of Boast, the Boast is going to encourage blocking. For one thing, like for Goldmaw Champ, for example, if you're effectively using the Boast ability and tapping defenders, your opponent's going to be like, we got to get that thing dead. We got to block that. We got to block and kill that thing. It's making combat too tough for us, right? Or we got to block and kill that thing, or they're just going to get free lands for the rest of the game. Where's the warrior? We got to block and kill that thing, or it's gonna just get endlessly big. Like, this is gonna get too big to block if we don't block it really soon, right? So the drawback of Boast is that it does nothing on defense. But one of the great advantages of Boast is how well it works with combat tricks, because of the general desire that your opponents are going to have to trade off for your Boast creatures. Because a very common play pattern, and kind of the point of doing it, is on some of these, where's the one that we liked in our Firewalker? Let's look at the Firewalker. A pretty common play pattern is going to be, well, outlived its usefulness, I'm going to send this in and at least get a replacement card. And when you can back up that play, when you can back up the legitimate, no, it is exactly what it looks like, I'm giving up this creature to get a card out of it, when you can surprise them with that combat trick, it's going to be very effective. So combat tricks go great with Boast, and as do equipment. If you can just get these bigger and make it so that Oppo doesn't have easy blocks to trade off with your Boast creature, then you're going to get those abilities through a lot more often. So those are the main things I have to think about with Boast. To note, ask yourself on each Boast, does attacking with this Boast creature encourage people to block, or does it encourage people to get out of the way? Because there's 2 different designs there that these cards are leaning on, and which kind you have in your deck more predominantly is gonna matter. So when I say, Jinx, when I say you get a card every time, it's because I'm saying if you're at the point where you're going to cash it in, where you're going to sacrifice it, then you are giving yourself a card. You're setting yourself I wouldn't do that if I couldn't basically cast anything my deck offered up. I suppose it could offer up some ill-timed combat trick or something that it's like, well, I can cast it, but I have to do it right now. But generally when I'm talking about guaranteed card, it's because you're doing that attack at a time where the card is effectively guaranteed. So next up, I want to talk about Changeling. Let's see what Changeling is in the set. A lot of green, a lot of blue. In fact, only green, only blue, and then one colorless. Okay, so that's what we wanted to know. It's a glue-like mechanic. Green blue's load-bearing mechanic was actually more snowy. Like green blue is not really Changeling. Green blue is snow. And then green and blue each have changelings to support green, black, and red, blue more than anything as pair mechanics. So keep that in mind. Keep in mind Shapeshifter does randomly work with some weird stuff like get something back out of your graveyard that's of a creature type. Yeah, elves, wizards, and giants are all supported, so that's basically what you're doing here. This is a pretty light tribal set to have Shapeshifter. It's an interesting decision from R&D to basically say, like Lorwyn was just filled with changelings, and like Lorwyn had 8 tribes it was supporting, and every color had multiple changelings at common so that all these different tribes could cross tribe and work. It was the most vitally important mechanic of Lorwyn for that whole set to function at all. But in this set, it's just a little piece, and it's interesting as a flavor as opposed to being the heavy thing. People are asking, isn't this about standard? I mean, tell me, what's the worst card here? Like is Mistwalker about standard? No, Mistwalker's not about standard, right? Mistwalker's about limited. It's tough to say chicken and egg here. Did Wizards of the Coast say, we need something in this set that supports the party mechanics we've developed in the previous set? What are we going to do to back support party? Hey, let's do some Shapeshifter stuff? Or did they come up with, hey, we want to do some tribal stuff in this set. Let's do it this way. Most likely it worked from we want this set for constructed is going to need stuff that glues it together with the party mechanics of both Zendikar and the upcoming the upcoming D&D set, right? So with party mechanics being relevant all around, I'm sure R&D said this set needs to do something to support those party mechanics. What is it? And it could have just been that this set happens to have arbitrarily some wizards, rogues, warriors, and clerics in it. That would be fine, and it probably does. But Shapeshifter is like a direct hit at that as well, yes. That being said, once you do commit to something, once you've said we want Changeling for standard, fine, you get your Changeling for standard, but now we need to make Changeling work for limited. So even if it's driven by what standard needs, it doesn't mean that it's a afterthought for limited. It just means that it may have been a forced hand that they then took a lot of care with. So keep that in mind there. I don't know, just Shapeshifters can sneakily matter, and it's interesting that they actually made them matter less in this set than they could have, but that they are doing a job certainly for constructed too. Few Berserker Matter cards floating around, says Mabnap. Good to know. We haven't really looked at the uncommons today, so there's probably some sweet stuff hiding in the uncommons. And speaking of that, in terms of prepping for a set, actually I'll say that later, but mythic uncommons are just the set drivers too, right? Like we end up thinking back on the broken uncommons that drove limited, and we want to be keeping an eye out for those in this set as well. But now I want to talk about living weapon. Well, that's not the way to put it, but let's look at equipment. And let's look at common and uncommon only. I want to see what the common and uncommon equipment is in the set. So first, 10 cards, 10 equipment cards across common and uncommon. But yeah, actually, what I really want to do is go back and look at the uncommon ones. They are uncommon, so they're not going to necessarily pop up all over the place. But look at this. Red has 2, and there's a colorless one. But the cycle of what I was calling in my notes living weapons, and I'm calling it because they're a throwback to New Phyrexia's living weapons. Oh, okay. Gotcha. One of these doesn't appear. Thanks. So the red one was a lie. Okay, great. So here's what we're really talking about. Red doesn't have 2. Red only has 1. But the point is, all of these are playable. Let's look at Rune Crown. I don't even know this one. When Rune Crown enters the battlefield, you may search your library, hand, or graveyard for a rune card and put it, that's the auras, right? And put it in the battlefield attached to Rune Crown. So that's cool. That's kind of a build around, but I'm more focused on the colored equipment here. All of this is playable and should be good, and it's also bringing up stuff. You're really going to kill this thing. But yeah, this is kind of all 6 of these are your reason to, I think, want to main deck enchantment or artifact hate. Like, these are very good, and it just means that your opponents with 6 of them available at uncommon, boy, your opponents are going to be showing these a lot, and they're very good, and they're very good because they leave equipment behind that can equip up later. And yes, if you spend a full card on removing one of these equipments that's already made a token, you're kind of getting a 1 for 2 against. But if you have incidental naturalized types effects or incidental ways to get artifacts, you're really going to want to include them because of this cycle, I think, basically. And we also noted, let's see, another mechanic we've noted a ton of in the set is the second spell. So let's look for a rules text of second spell. Oh, that's uncommons. Let's look at any rarity. Is it only in white black? I'm surprised. Is my filter wrong? No, it's just only white black. Okay, so this is why I'm doing this. In my head, there was a lot more second spell rewards than maybe it's because Marshall and Luis talked about it so much. I'm only halfway through LR, which has covered both white and black, and so I just thought it was going to be throughout. But really, it's just for this color pair. So it's worth noting that the act of exiling a card that has foretell is not casting it. So if you foretell something and then cast a spell, you have not cast 2 spells. You've only cast 1 spell. So I want you to keep that in mind. And then I guess that's really okay. That's worth noting. It's just that colors pair. That's cool. Also, just a lot of graveyard, a lot of stuff that matters about having creatures in graveyards. So if you are if you have the ability to say exile exile cards from your opponent's graveyard, you're going to want to exile their creatures because there are things that that feed off of that. Whew. All right. That's kind of I guess the last thing I wanted to say is we're gonna identify our mythic uncommons, and that ends up being like the thing that drives our memory of limited as much as anything is are the Roost of Drakes, the Zenith Flares of a set. You know, that's the stuff that is really going to define limited, I think, for us into the future here. And that's going to take some time. I haven't really looked at all the uncommons yet, but when we come back tomorrow for the preview stream, tomorrow is the streamer preview of Kaldheim. We're going to keep an eye out for what our nominations for mythic uncommons are and understand what is going to drive the set that way. But I am going to say goodbye to our YouTube friends now. I'm going to thank you for hanging out for this little foray into the upcoming set. I'm looking forward to figuring it out during gameplay with you in the days and weeks to come. All right, bye YouTube friends. Now, is Marshall about? Can we raid our friend Marshall yet? Not yet. Maybe he's not streaming today. Well, I'm going to be hopping off air here, so if nobody does a raid captain in the next couple minutes, I'm going to make my own choice. How about Corticals? Oh, there you go. I mean, somebody had better redeem Corticals, or I would never think to go there. All right, pile on. Thank you for hanging out, everybody. Appreciate it. That was fun. I feel better prepared for tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to it. Gonna have a nice long stream tomorrow as we put some of these thoughts to the test and see how the rubber meets the road. Bye, all.